Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and welcome to Executive Mode, Episode 1.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gus. Really appreciate you having me and excited to kick off a very great and much needed podcast series. Again, like Gus said, my name is Kayan Mishra. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Mudita Studios, and we are out on a mission to redefine what it looks like to build AI native businesses and what that looks like from a venture perspective. We are working on incubating, building, and ultimately launching new ventures at scale and being able to look back and say, what does a true AI native approach look like? I get to keep my hands in go-to-market and product and operations and finance and legal and get to see kind of on the ground how new businesses are being created. What are some of the opportunities that AI brings in terms of new venture creation? But I also get to see for myself as an executive of the studio, how my external board reporting processes have been augmented, how I do my monthly close at the end of here, April. Things that used to take me a week and maybe analysts below me and full teams to execute, properly end to end now have become 15, 20-minute tasks to do in co-work. So really excited to walk you guys through. Want to keep this super lightweight and flexible with us. Got a couple of things that I think would be super helpful given the audience and types of people we have here with us. This is only helpful if we make it dynamic and your guys' questions kind of get answered with things. One of the great things about AI is that we all get to learn it together, and it's all a new technology being for all of us. And the more that we can lean in together and have more sessions like this, I think the better we all become at bringing this into our organization. So
Great. Thanks for that, Kayan. So let's talk about the three workflows. The first, Kayan's going to show us putting together a financial dashboard. I know I'll be watching that intently. Next, he'll show us how he goes about creating awesome decks. And then we'll talk about how we connect AI to the world and get even more work done. So Kayan, do you want to share your screen and walk us through that first workflow?
let's do it. First place I think we wanted to start today was a very familiar environment for a number of folks here, and looking at my financials here in QuickBooks. This is a sandbox company, not our actual financials. For any folks that are on my team on this call, we are a separate environment, don't you worry. But here, QuickBooks becomes the source of truth for a lot of the data. And ultimately, when I think about best utilizing some of these AI tools, the first step in the process is understanding what do I want Claude or OpenAI or some of these large language models to go out and understand about what I'm trying to do, and what I call context load. For this first dashboard that I'll be building, I know all of the context lives inside of QuickBooks. So the first thing that I want to do before I even go and start prompting is I want to collect that data in a package and let Claude reason through it. So what I can go and do here in QuickBooks is I can say I want to export my data. Many of these business applications have this across a number of different tools. And I can say, okay, I'm going to export all of my data. And this is just my raw, my general ledger, my P&L, my balance sheet. And you can see as I open this up, these are the kind of core things that I get out of QuickBooks, what I will call context for today's session. I'll fire up a new window here. And a couple of things to point out. One, if you haven't updated Claude recently or installed the desktop app, I would highly recommend doing so. Mac, Windows does a really great job now of leveraging the operating system and some of the core capabilities that you have on the computer in a way that previously the AI couldn't in a web browser. One of the ways is being able to access the files that exist on your computer or even in cloud places like Google Drive. Today, I'm going to be walking through and we're going to create a project here. Choose a folder. And I'm going to take that QuickBooks folder where this is Craig's design and landscape, same files that we were looking at. And the first thing that I want to do before I go and say, hey, make me a dashboard to go and do this, is I want Claude to go understand, what are we even looking at here? When I think about prompting, one of the things that you'll notice and that I'll show is prompting to me is about steering a car or steering a ship rather than, hey, really refined prompting. So my first prompt is just going to say, read this. Tell me what you think.
And Kayan, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on now? Because I saw you shared a folder. There's some files there. Now you're telling it, read this. What's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah. So ultimately, what Claude and some of these other AI tools have been able to do is they're able to read files in a more scalable way than we used to think they could. Before, I know many of us would drop in a PDF or one PowerPoint and say, hey, can you read this? Can we iterate off of this? Can you see some of the data that I may have in it? Now what we have done is we said, let me go unleash you on an entire folder. And if you think of these folders as kind of directories for Claude, Claude then can experiment and understand the materials across different formats, PowerPoint, Word documents, videos, audio files, to understand and kind of digest the material before giving you the output that you're looking for here in a financial. So Claude said,
Uh,
hey, I can see your selected folder. I have these 8 Excels. What do you want me to do with it?
Before you go there, I have a question. That worries me a little bit. I don't want Claude to see all my personal files. I mean, how much access does it have?
Yeah. It's a really great thing that Anthropic has done a lot of thinking around this before deploying it out to the public. Couple of different safety measures that they've put in. One, I choose where I want Claude to access my files. So today we only gave it to access to Craig's design and landscaping services. We didn't give it access more broadly to the computer. And so we can kind of select the environment and say, hey, Claude, you're restricted. You can't leave this, what is called sandbox almost environment to understand the material. Does that help, Gus?
Does definitely.
Any other questions on this topic? I know it's one that comes up quite frequently about data and the security of it. Feel free to throw any questions in the chat as well as we walk through, thinking
Well,
about what we can share and what we can't share.
actually, now that you mentioned it, so now they have access to your sensitive financial information. Should I be worried that Claude has that access? Is Anthropic going to do something with that information?
Yeah, it's a great question, one that I know many business executives have asked themselves over the years. Now with Claude and the proper kind of security and versioning that they've put into place, one, for an enterprise level, they have created environments where your data belongs to you and is not properly shared uh, and live inside of the Claude ecosystem. But two, foundationally, how these large language models behave, your data is no different than any other data that goes into this. It is not responsible necessarily for your financial information will not be asked in the next generation of models. I couldn't go and say in GPT-6 or the next Opus, hey, Craig Design and Landscaping Services, can you get their financials for me? Foundationally, the way that the data and the models work, Anthropic does a really good job of making sure that doesn't happen for customers.
Great.
Awesome. So jumping into this, we got a couple of things we can also do on the security perspective. We can say we want to ask for approvals, we want to skip all approvals. Today we'll walk through and say, hey, let me ask. After Claude has kind of read through and understood I have these selected folders and these files, maybe say, hey, yeah, let's do a financial health overview, we can call it. And the beautiful thing about Claude or any of these new, when you use a desktop application for AI, is we're not trying to inform it by telling it everything just through the chat window. We're allowing it to come to its own conclusions based off of the data available. Claude has asked me, how do you want to format this dashboard? Do you want a Word doc? Do you want an Excel? Gus, any preference?
Um, I'd love a Excel dashboard and then a quick chat summary too.
Perfect. So we can say 2 and 4 would be great. We can call it a standard overview.
Yeah, that works.
Let's see what we look.
Now, what if I don't have access to Claude and I've got Gemini or I've got OpenAI ChatGPT subscription? Could I also do this type of thing?
Absolutely. So each of the AI providers today, or the model providers, have respective applications that you can utilize very similar to the Claude ecosystem today. Foundationally, my goal is to help rethink how we use AI and the processes we think about using. I had a conversation last week with somebody who, I think, Gus, you had told me yesterday at dinner how many of your team wants to focus on, individual portions of what is a much larger assignment. My job is to really help and think, let's go for the entire assignment from the start, because that's really the objective. We are ultimately going for a financial dashboard. I could have asked, what's the revenue? What's the expense? How much was spent on beef this month? But now I can look at it and truly align myself with the real objective of what I'm looking for. So as Claude is running through here, we can actually take a look in, and I find this to be really interesting to understand how Claude thinks. As a user, as you dive into what is called the thought or reasoning of these models, I can go and click and I see and say, hey, understand, hey, there was a skill that was called. And we can explain what a skill is. Or I made an update to the task. It's now being in progress. They've updated. Okay, we are reading the financial data files, and we continue to run what it is that Claude runs. And we can just sit here and wait. And Claude is going to reason through the available data that we have. They're going to edit through. And it's very normal that, and some of these AI models now will take multiple minutes to process your responses. It means that they're really doing deep, thoughtful work. When I think about what is the longer that Claude takes, the more happy that I tend to be, because it means that it's really going and I'm using the depth of this properly.
And
Gosh,
so why did you choose Claude and not one of the other tools? Is there any
yeah.
reason?
So the true AI entrepreneurs use a variation of different tools for different purposes, and there is no one size fits all today. Video models may come from one provider. Image generation models may come from a different provider. We have a very fragmented market and ecosystem of different players that specialize in different things. Over time, I think we will start to see market leaders emerge. The best thing that we can do is to become familiar with and to experiment and to try and come to a conclusion of Anthropic was a personal decision that landed for me because of the workflows that they had supported. It by no means it would be the one that I would recommend for you. I think the best recommendation is spend the time to try the different tools out, understand the limits, understand where the barriers are, and make an informed decision that matches what works for your workflow and use case.
In my own experience, I have subscriptions to Claude, Gemini, and OpenAI. I'm finding right now probably the tool that is the most productive for me and gives me the best answers. Just works the best for me is Claude as well. And it's I think the Claude code the Claude co-work plan starts at $20 a month, so it's not even very expensive.
Gus, given that this is going to really build us a good, robust dashboard. Should we show what parallelization looks like here and how you can run multiple kind of tasks at the same time?
Yep. And let me ask you, we've got a great question. So, what if I'm a big Google Drive user? Will this also connect with Google Drive, and can I manipulate those files?
Fantastic question. Maybe while this is kind of walking through, show what we were going to show at the back end, but is called connectors. Connectors are a way for Claude or other tools to work with the applications that we have today. Google Drive is one of the many connectors that you can utilize inside of Claude and can ask for files that exist inside of your Google Drive, your Google Calendar, and the broader Google ecosystem. As you are setting up your connectors, I encourage everyone to take a read through what the read and write accesses are. As we've talked about with security and privacy, what data you want Claude to be able to read versus what data you want Claude to be able to write. It's really important to understand what Claude needs approval on versus what Claude may not need approval on.
That's great.
Fantastic. So as this continues to kind of calculate and roll through, I'd love to take us on a parallel journey in the land of PowerPoint decks. In my previous life, I was a consultant at PwC, and so I developed skills to really refine messaging and position a deck in a visual way that could be understood and digested by a reader effectively. Claude has now become incredibly good at building PowerPoint presentations as well. There are tools and skills and prompts that can be utilized, and we will go through all of them. But the first piece that I want to anchor us in with this is that the best way to work with Claude is to decide on what the storyboard or the narrative should be of the deck inside of Claude, instead of trying to just say, hey, go make slides. Let me walk you through an example. Let's say we want to make a sales deck. I want to make a sales deck. And I'm going to use the same Craig's Design Landscaping Financials tool. Recapping my Q1 sales targets. Can you ask me 10 questions about what I'm looking for? What I've done with Claude is I flipped it. And I said, Claude, I'm no longer the expert. You are the expert. You interview me. Help me get what I have in my head. This process and what they've called an ask user question that you will see here is really effective to get some of the details out in prompting that normally we would try to all put in one prompt at the beginning. Many of the times people have come to me in a lot of conversations like this and say, hey, how do I prompt this correctly? What's the master prompt you use? I like to have Claude interview me. So who's the primary audience? Okay, let's make executive leadership. We exceeded targets. I want it narrative and story driven. 10, 15 slides is great. Just like that, without me, these could have been questions that I didn't even think about. I don't know. Did we exceed targets? I may have to go check. How long did I want the deck to be? And now I get to be interviewed by Claude. I want the pipeline, I want the team, and I want revenue bookings per quarter. Segmentation cuts, skew. And I'm now getting very detailed questions about my objectives here. I choose 10 arbitrarily. I find that 10 questions, Claude gets a really good feel for what I'm looking for. You could make that 100 questions. You could spend 2 days doing just interviewing and questions back and forth with Claude. before you kick off a project. But the more context information that you can go and give, the better Claude does of actually understanding and giving you what you want the first time, or at least delivering in a place that's easier for you to iterate on.
How did you get it to ask you 10 questions?
I
Oh,
just
can you ask me 10 questions? I missed that the first time around. That's great.
just like that. We'll make it clean and corporate. And ooh, speaker notes and appendix would be great. I would have probably thought to have done the speaker notes separately in a separate workflow and waited for the deck to be done. So if we break down, okay, just the couple deliverables here. The deck is a 10 to 15 hour exercise, maybe 20 with the appendix and some of the deeper data, not to count the amount of time that it goes and takes for you to pull the sales data and roll that back up. Imagine a Claude folder that exists with not only the financials, but your sales data, your connections into your CRM. And when all of that comes together in Claude, Claude becomes much more informed on your business. And through things like connectors, you can marry together the financials that you uploaded from QuickBooks with the connector from your CRM and understand both perspectives together. Any questions on how we did that, what context loading looks like?
Great.
Session will be recorded and we will send over a copy as well, and we will also attach a couple of the skills files that we've utilized today. Can show you through. Trisha, great question. So now Claude is memorizing you across projects. So you are getting a lot of the personalization, contextual memory, but also just pure preferences of, hey, I like really clean messaging. I met with one of our media buyers today who shared with me, and he goes, hey, we're using Claude now to design some ad creatives, and because of a completely different session and client, we got really clean ad creatives that I had told, and I had said, hey, in completely unrelated to this client, but the format learned to what I liked and was able to apply it across sessions. Before we kick this PowerPoint deck off here, Claude is ready to build. We've asked some great questions, but I'm going to ask Claude back and I'm going to say, can you give me the storyboard first?
Ooh.
Or the table of contents? And let me just make sure that what Claude thinks should be the table of contents is actually. I've given it some direction, and so now I get to see, okay, 13 slides, 5 to 7 slide appendix. I don't know about you, Gus. This feels organized. This feels good, but it's lacking some messaging. It doesn't feel super personalized. There doesn't seem a narrative to go through. My team would sleep through this deck.
I
What happens?
agree. And I think we should have the team spotlight a lot further, a lot closer to the start than buried at the end of the presentation. Let's highlight those folks.
Let's do it. Let's move the team slide up. And honestly, the deck doesn't sell me. Feels weak. What do you think? When I ask questions to Claude, it forces itself to look back at its work. And the term that gets used is gaslighting has become a big trend with Claude. And to say, Claude, do you think, there you go, gaslighting Claude. Claude, what do you think? Do you think you did a good job with this? What that does, one, is it helps in this kind of short-term loop of you get a better result in the immediate. But that process with what Trisha brought up is the memory saves over time. And so one loop that you may do here is going to save across a different loop. And the changes that I instrumented here will then get updated over time. So structured like a report, not a pitch. Headline slide is thin. What work is buried at slide 9? Yep, this feels right. Cool. I will bring in, and I can share this with the team as well. Cool. Can you use the PowerPoint skill and make this? While that is going, we can go back. Oh, our financial health dashboard is ready. Ta-da. We have a new Excel that exists on our computer in the same folder with all the raw data that I can go ahead and open up. I can even take this straight into Google Drive. And see, okay, total revenue, 10,000. We have a balance sheet, we have a P&L,
Wow.
ratios, accounts payable, receivable. Oh, okay, invoices. Interesting.
I
I'm a
like
tough.
the key takeaways at the bottom.
Ooh,
That's phenomenal.
fantastic. This feels really great. Oh, dynamic formulas. So it's actually referencing across, doing calculations. Not bad. We could go take this now and say, now that the data is loaded in, let me go write the presentation script. We could go make the deck off of this. But because we did the context loading up front, gives us a lot more variation of the things that we can do. How do you verify if these calculations are accurate?
That's a great question.
How do you verify if these calculations are accurate? It's a fantastic question that I like to ask Claude. And Claude will go back and catch its own mistakes. And oftentimes, let's say I decided, I'm like, Claude, I think this is ready. I think I want to, print this. I want to go send this. I go through a 3-step and I say, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? With that, it doesn't matter what complexity of work I could possibly introduce. Claude will go run the checks for you. On something simple like a financial health dashboard, I probably wouldn't be super worried on this first one. The QuickBooks data was very clear, and you can kind of track back. 9.9 times out of 10, this first shot is going to be correct. But you can go through and check and say, hey, is there anything that we wanted to go through or not? And Claude will go and tell you. And asking Claude as part of the learning of the skill is to say a question that you would have normally pinged, just go back to the environment. And it's your job to create and steer Claude through all of the context and knowledge that you have across your business applications, your personal files, your Google Drive, or anything that you may want to research with Claude as well.
Hey, Kayan, could you talk a little bit about so this format, did you give it a format and it created it in this format? How did it get with these colors and stuff?
So I didn't. There are files that are called skills files that we've referenced. And at the end, I'll show you how to actually create a skill file and what that looks like. But all of this is flexible. I have certain templates that I've used prior. That one was not applied today that show I like Harvard's business school's template for my financial reporting. It's clean, it's well understood, it's universal. I want it very clear, very precise in that. I want no the font needs to be the same. Claude has learned that from me. And so now when I am building files for any external reporting, sharing with stakeholders, I can go back and I can say, hey, remember, I like this style, and styles can be updated.
And where could I get like so like this Harvard Business School's finance reporting skill. Is that like, can I get that myself and use it?
Great question. There are tons of directories online that help share skills files with users. Skills are no different than a prompt. And a lot of the initial prompting that we were trying to figure out as users in the early days of AI have been solved with skills. Let's say I want to find a skill for email. And I want to do a cold email sequence. Ooh, this looks interesting. Cold email. Write B2B cold emails and follow-up sequences that get replies. Use when the user wants to write cold email. Cool. Okay. Let's take this. And what I can go ahead and do is I can download this, or I can just say copy, or I can just take the URL. I like to just take the URL. And I can say in a new task here, same inside of that Craig's Design and Landscaping Services. I'm just going to let it understand what's even here. You'll see my prompting is very limited and intentional. I don't like to overcorrect and oversteer Claude. But now Claude will go ahead and take a look at that skill for how to write cold emails. And simply just by dropping in the URL, you can install a skill now in these applications. Can ping this link in the chat for everyone. This is one of many. If I were to type in skills library, which I often do, many different examples exist. Claude Code for coding folks. Sure.
Wow. Tons of skills.
We can go back. Did you see? I clicked a little quickly. I'll wait on this next one. But Gus, did you see that blue dot that showed up here?
Yep.
That blue dot is how Claude lets me know, hey, it needs my attention on something. So when I run multiple threads at the same time, I'm looking for that blue dot. We can see very little here, running, and then when that blue dot comes up, that's when I know to go back to something. All right. All checks pass. Here's how I verified accuracy.
Sweet.
8 independent tests. We checked against the raw QuickBooks. And we can even say, Claude, suggest 20 ways you would make this a better dashboard. That's why I limit it to our imaginations. Claude is perfectly great at coming up with new ideas on how to make this financial dashboard based off of now the real data that it has available.
That's a great idea. One question that's come up with is how do we confirm that the skills don't have any dangerous actions inside of them?
Yeah, great question. Another place where I encourage AI literacy and education. Skills are nothing more than a prompt. And when you look at, let me pull up here a skill file that sits on my side. Let's see, this is, cool. We can use this, for example. Oops, there's gonna be a whole bunch of them. I have this in a text edit, but fundamentally, a skill file is text. And when you are looking to authenticate or understand what a skill file does, it is on you as the user to understand and to read, hey, this is for Mudita, a client weekly check-in deck generator. You produce a weekly check-in for a client engagement, Here's their colors, the fonts, the imagery, and read through kind of what the prompting and sequence is. Skills from other folks are great. These directories exist, they're fantastic. The best skills get made from doing great work with Claude. So let's see, we've got a PowerPoint deck here. Claude brought together what Q1 proved. We've got some placeholders here. Styling is okay, but some good structure. But we have built out kind of a shell of what this deck looks like, and we can further iterate.
I see it moved the top performers up in the presentation like you asked it to.
Yes, it did. Oh yeah, bring in the team.
That's a great deck. If I tried to build a deck that looked that good, I'd be at it for quite a while.
Absolutely. And the thing about the PowerPoint skills inside of Claude is there is a stock kind of AI feel that many decks have today. But as firms like McKinsey and Bain and BCG have their own themes, their own decks, bringing in references to create skill files is incredibly, incredibly useful. So Claude is not limited to the decks that it creates and the themes that it knows. You can also bring in your own branded existing materials and give that to Claude to say, hey, can you make me a new deck that looks like this deck that I already have? Jesse's got that question here. Did I use a template to train Claude for the PowerPoint? This is Claude raw today. What I can show is we've got a skill file that my team and I have been working on. Shout out to Ziad, who I believe is on with us, of trying to brand this in our right feel. That's something that I can go and do. And I created the structure of it, but just by giving it this skill file. Can you rebrand? To our look and feel. And I have given it a skill file that is trained on Mudita decks. So the way that I did that was exactly as you shared. I used a template. I used a reference for a deck that already existed. I created a skill file with it and said, hey, can you make me a skill file based off of this reference deck? And now I can have Claude make kind of the universal version of the deck, the stock version. And I can then overlay a particular brand's messaging, positioning feel.
That's great. That's so powerful.
Same thing here, just by dropping in the skill. Claude gives us two different ways that we can go ahead and install. It
So
also flagged that I picked a skill that I already had installed on the machine, that I had previously used it. And so it's already available in my environment.
got it. Could you how would you summarize how would you answer the question, what's the advantage of downloading skills versus just doing without them?
I don't find there to be an advantage today. Will there be an advantage in maybe 3 months? Very likely. Today, I like to be very selective about where I bring in my skills and where I use them. There are times that I'll be working on decks and I don't want a skill file for a particular format. I'm trying to do something in a different way. So I like to drag in skills files as I need them. Claude is getting better and better at understanding what skills files exist, what are the different ways that you can go and use these. But today I like to be kind of the controller or orchestrator of this.
That's great. What about agents? Can you set up multiple agents in Claude?
You can. So a couple of different ways. And the agent term, no matter how you interpret it, we will call it one entity of AI for simplistic purposes. Agents live a couple of different ways. One way that I have seen is agents can live inside of this new scheduled functionality from Anthropic. And in scheduled agents, I can create, again, an agent that goes and does a particular task at a repeated time. Many times people will use this for daily briefs. And I can say at the start of every day, can you send me a recap of all of the meetings or all of the emails I missed in the last 12 hours? Any outstanding Slack messages, and my calendar for the day from Google Calendar. Let's go. Oops, I put this here. Those are the instructions. Morning brief. This then becomes an agent. You can pick, I'll use this model. I'll have it skip. No, we'll have it ask for approvals. And I want this to happen daily at 9 a.m. Let's make it at 8 a.m. so that nice and early. Great, and I can press save. And so tomorrow, I will get a brief at 8 a.m. and using those connectors that we talked about earlier, using these connectors, I have Google Calendar installed, Google Drive, my Gmail. I could have my CRM here, and I could get a snapshot view every morning of how many customers are in each stage of my funnel. I could have linear tickets, and the list goes on.
Wow.
Highly, highly recommend connectors, skills files, understanding that ecosystem, because you start to then chain together pieces. And I think that's really where you're replacing and doing kind of end-to-end work rather than just one piece in a much larger chain.
That's great. Another way that I've used agents is literally in a task. I will say launch a series of sub-agents to research my competitors, for example, and compile a report. And then Claude will actually launch a bunch of agents, that one agent per competitor, that'll go out to the web and do research, and then they'll bring it together to one agent that then takes all that information and produces that output file. So you could literally say launch agents to do something, and it will launch a series of parallel sub agents. Super useful. Great.
It's quite incredible the pace at which, and oftentimes I find myself feeling behind and saying, am I maximizing? Am I utilizing tokens properly? Am I building the best workflows? Step one, if there's one thing that I could say walk away from today, it is context management is the first step in no matter what you do moving forward in AI. Focus on getting the right data into Claude before you go and start doing anything. Claude code is Claude co-work without any data or without any code context can feel overwhelming, intimidating, not feeling like it's following your control. The piece of this is in loading that data in early, sharing that context so that Claude becomes more personal to you over time.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for walking us through your workflows. We have about 9 minutes left. Oh, I urge people who have any questions, stick them in the Zoom and we'll cover them. Right now, We have John asking about, have you seen an improvement between Opus 4.6 and Opus 4.7? This is a bit of a controversial question, but have you seen any difference in your work, Kayan?
I I have you see a difference in maybe the snappiness of what I will call in the model, and maybe how many steps it takes you. The core principles don't change between model releases and how you steer this ship of an LLM and how you think about utilizing. Claude connectors or MCP servers or skills don't become obsolete every time there's a new model coming in. So the goal is if you learn the basic practices of working with an AI, when to insert yourself in the loop, when to not have yourself in the loop, that is, core foundational skills that will work across models, across updates, and across systems, even in this quick pace that we're in today.
Got it. Thanks. Other
Claude,
questions? Okay. Um, so in general, how much would you say you've saved in terms of hours by leveraging these tools?
so for the PowerPoint example, per deck is 10 to 15 hours easily, just in collecting the raw information necessary to be educated to populate the deck takes man hours and time from team. There's a core just 10 to 15 hours and moving slides around and getting alignment that is able to be saved here.
Great. And what newsletters, resources, so on and so forth, are you consuming to stay up to date?
Ooh, ton of them out there. My favorite, if you're not on X, X is where a lot of information today in AI lives, and that has become the social media choice. Substack is another platform that people love to stay educated on. The real best way to stay up to date with AI is to use it, to integrate it into your workflows, to bring it into your daily life. There is an academic exercise that I find that many people will go through and become quite frustrated of reading the guides, watching the YouTube videos, and I think they are very helpful to start. Throw yourself in, ask the questions that you would want to ask myself, Gus, other team members, ask them directly into Claude, come back. I think you will have a fantastic time as Claude, begins to better understand you and map to you and your use cases.
Let me give a shout out to Sabrina Romanov. I highly advise if you're interested in staying up to date. She's the founder of Blotato, and she's just awesome. She has great tips, tricks, lots of interesting stuff, great content. I would give her a follow. Nate B. Jones is a bit more technical, as is Matt Freeman. Matt Freeman is probably one of the best popularizers of AI, although he gets fairly technical at times. So hopefully those are some good resources. Seems like Rayhan also has a Substack, so maybe go give Rayhan's Substack a follow. He just pasted it into the chat. So as we come to the end of our session, little homework for everyone. Um, so in order to help you adopt AI and see some of the improvements that Kayan has seen, I suggest you do three things over the next week. So first, pick your messiest input pile, get your emails, your docs, Slack threads, all that stuff on one decision you're trying to make. Drop it into a prompt and ask for a decision ready one pager. See what the AI comes back with. If you're using Claude, see what Claude comes back with and have a conversation with Claude about why it made the decision it made. What about other angles of looking at that decision? And see if it provides value to you. And after that, really review your experience and try using it again for your next decision, and see how you improve in your interaction with Claude or any AI you might be using. I've found that at this point, I really won't make many decisions without consulting the AI and having that conversation, particularly in a business setting. I find it invaluable. Another task that I think everyone should try is really generate one deliverable end to end, leveraging one of the AI tools. Do a report, a memo, a deck, something that you do yourself. Time yourself to see how long it takes you to do it, and then try doing it with AI and see how it improved, how it got it out quicker, and also look at the quality, see if it helped you really up your game as an executive. And then spend some time trying to go deep on one of these tools. Kayan was showing us Claude Cowork. That's a very deep tool. He briefly touched on schedule tasks, but there are things like routines. There's a dispatch. There's a whole bunch of other features that you can leverage to get a lot more productive. You also have access within that interface within the Claude desktop app. You have access to another tool called Claude Cowork. If you're a programmer, you know what it's about. If you're not a programmer, it basically writes code for you, and it can write some fairly sophisticated code. And then you also have access to a chat interface. So these are all great tools, and I urge you to dig deep. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot us an email. As mentioned, Stathi will be sending out additional information. And I thank everyone for coming. And Kayan, thanks a lot. That was a great session. You're really going to help me up my game.
Thanks, folks, for joining. Thank you for having me, Gus.
Take care, everyone.